Welcome back to War Machines Chronicles. Today, we're hitting the road to explore a revolution that changed warfare forever. Before the mighty tanks ruled the battlefield, a new breed of machine emerged, combining the power of the internal combustion engine with armor and firepower. These were the first war cars, the pioneers that brought mobility and protection to the front lines. So buckle up as we trace the origins of armored combat on wheels. The story begins in 1899, in Great Britain, with a vehicle that looks like something straight out of a steampunk fantasy. The Sims Motor War Car. This machine is widely considered the very first modern armored car in history. Imagine this. A grey metallic beast powered by a German Daimler gasoline engine clanking down the road. Its steel armor, though thin by today's standards, was designed to stop the bullets of its time. Manned by a crew of 4, it bristled with 2 Maxim machine guns, ready to lay down a storm of fire. The vision of its creator, Frederick Sims, was to build a self-propelled fortress that could advance with infantry, providing cover and support. While the Sims Motor War Car was a groundbreaking concept, a true marvel of engineering for its time, it never actually saw combat. It was a prototype, a bold statement of what was possible. It proved that a vehicle could carry its own armor and weapons, a concept that would ignite the imagination of military minds across the world. It was the first crucial step, the ancestor of every armored fighting vehicle to come. But innovation doesn't always happen in a lab. Between 1900 and the outbreak of World War I, necessity became the mother of invention on battlefields around the globe. Armies and militias began improvising, transforming ordinary civilian cars and trucks into makeshift fighting machines. This was guerrilla engineering at its finest. They would bolt heavy steel plates onto the sides of commercial trucks, creating crude armored personnel carriers. In other cases, they'd pile sandbags onto touring cars to offer some protection against rifle fire. Some vehicles were simply armed with a machine gun mounted on a tripod in the back. These improvised war cars were common in the colonial conflicts and internal disputes of the early 20th century. They were used to patrol vast territories, protect vital supply convoys, and fight in hit-and-run skirmishes. They weren't sophisticated, but they were effective. They demonstrated the incredible tactical advantage of speed and firepower, proving that even a little armor was better than none at all. These ad hoc vehicles were the rugged, practical cousins of the more polished prototypes, and they played a vital role in popularizing the idea of mechanized warfare. As the concept of the armored car gained traction, engineers in France were working on a major breakthrough. In 1902, the company Charon, Girardot et Voigt unveiled a vehicle that would introduce a feature we now consider standard on almost every tank, the rotating turret. This was a game-changer. Until then, machine guns on armored cars were often fixed in place or had a very limited field of fire. The Charon's design placed a Hotchkiss machine gun inside a fully armored, manually rotated turret. This meant the gunner could engage targets in almost any direction without having to turn the entire vehicle. It was a massive leap in combat effectiveness. The vehicle itself was lightly armored, with some protection even for its wheels, but its true historical importance lies in that turret. It separated the act of driving from the act of aiming, allowing the crew to perform both tasks simultaneously and independently. This principle of a traversable turret became a fundamental element in the design of future armored fighting vehicles, most notably the tanks that would appear just over a decade later. The Charon was more than just a car with a gun. It was a true weapons platform on wheels. As tensions mounted across Europe, the Russian Empire was gearing up for conflict. In 1914, they rolled out a vehicle that was built from the ground up for one purpose: war. This was the Russo Bolt Type C. Unlike the earlier prototypes or improvised vehicles, the Russo Bolt was designed as a dedicated armored car and put into limited series production. It featured complete armor protection for the crew and engine compartment. It wasn't just a car with plates bolted on. Its body was an integrated armored shell. It was typically armed with 3 machine guns, providing significant firepower for reconnaissance and infantry support missions. The Russo Bolt was one of the very first armored cars to be mass-produced, albeit in small numbers, specifically for use in a major war. When World War I broke out, these vehicles were immediately sent to the Eastern Front. They saw real combat, engaging in skirmishes, and providing valuable mobile fire support in the early, more fluid stages of the war. The Rousseau-Bolt Type C marks a critical transition point, moving the armored car from a curious experiment to a standardized piece of military hardware ready for the battlefield. With the eruption of the First World War in 1914, the armored car truly came of age. The initial phases of the war involved rapid movements and fluid front lines, the perfect environment for these wheeled warriors. Nations like Great Britain, France, Germany, Russia, and Italy began developing and deploying armored cars in large numbers. These vehicles became the eyes and ears of the army, performing dangerous reconnaissance missions deep into enemy territory. They supported infantry attacks, breaking up enemy formations with their machine guns. In the chaotic street-to-street fighting that occurred in captured towns and villages, their combination of mobility and protection was invaluable. They were also used to patrol roads and protect vulnerable supply lines from raids. However, the armored car had a fatal weakness. As the war bogged down and the landscape of the Western Front turned into a hellscape of trenches, mud, and shell craters, their limitations became painfully clear. Their wheels would get stuck in the mud, and they were incapable of crossing the wide trenches that defined the conflict. The war car, a master of the road, was helpless in the face of no man's land. This very problem, the inability of wheeled vehicles to handle the brutal terrain of trench warfare, directly spurred the invention of a new, unstoppable machine, the tank. So what exactly is the difference between these early war cars and the tanks that succeeded them? It all comes down to a few key design choices. The most obvious difference is their mobility. War cars run on wheels, just like a regular car. This makes them fast and efficient on roads and relatively firm ground. Tanks, on the other hand, move on tracks. These tracks distribute the vehicle's immense weight over a much larger area, allowing them to crawl over mud, crush barbed wire, and cross trenches without getting stuck. This all-terrain capability is what made the tank the king of the battlefield. The second major difference is armor. War cars typically had light armor, just enough to protect the crew from small arms fire and shrapnel. Tanks, which first appeared in 1916, were designed to withstand machine gun fire and even artillery shells, featuring much thicker and heavier armor. Finally, their origins tell the story. The war car was born from the automobile, an adaptation of civilian technology for military use. The tank was a purpose-built weapon of war, created specifically to solve the deadlock of the trenches. The war car was the sprinter. The tank was the marathon runner, built for the toughest course on Earth. Let's wrap this up. The first war cars were the true pioneers of modern, mechanized warfare. From the experimental Sims motor war car to the improvised vehicles of colonial conflicts and the mass-produced models of World War I, they were the crucial first step. They introduced the revolutionary formula of combining an engine, armor, and weapons into a single platform. They proved the immense value of mobile, protected firepower, and forever changed military tactics. And in their failure to conquer the trenches, they paved the way for their even more fearsome successor, the tank. These early armored cars weren't just vehicles. They were a radical idea on wheels that set the stage for a century of armored combat. Thank you for joining us on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed this dive into military history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to War Machines Chronicles, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next episode. Until next time, stay curious.